Sky Talkers is a member of the Star Wars Escape Pods Network. Explore more great content and get to know our sister shows at weareescapepods.com and on Twitter at weareescapepods. The Star Wars Escape Pods Network, promoting positivity in fandom.
Welcome to Sky Talkers Fulcrum Files, where Caitlin and Charlotte break down the latest episode of Star Wars Rebels. An in-depth discussion commencing in 3, 2, 1.
Hello and welcome to Sky Talkers. I'm your host, Charlotte.
Hey everyone, I am your other host, Caitlin, and welcome to Fulcrum Files, where we are talking about the craziest 2 episodes we've had since the Clone Wars.
I know, seriously. Oh my God, these episodes, I'm still recovering. My brain is kind of like not even able to process them fully, but we're going to do our best. How are you feeling?
I mean, if you thought last week was bad emotionally, you should have seen me this week. I should have videotaped myself watching this episode because I think I described it to you later that night as just a lot of heaving and gasping because I couldn't process like a happy emotion or a sad emotion. It was just a lot of just a lot of that, a lot of moving. I got a lot closer to my TV as the night wore on. I started drinking out of my wine bottle instead of pouring it into a glass. I finished the wine bottle and then I was like up close and personal with my TV. And then at the very last scene with Ezra and Hera is when I finally broke down crying and just a lot of emotions.
I don't know what it was about this episode to me, but I was like, I feel like just because everything that happened in this episode happened kind of exactly like I wanted the characters to act. And I was just like so overwhelmed with how gorgeous it looked, how we had come so far as a show and as like the Star Wars lore goes and like everything that came before this. I was just so emotional throughout. I was like happy tears. I was like screaming at the commercial breaks. I was like jumping around my apartment at certain parts. I was so happy, but so distraught too. Like, I don't even know.
It was so strange. I had no idea what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And I think from the minute that Hera felt Kanan's presence behind her, it was downhill from there.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
And
wow.
It's like, as you guys know, my favorite character in Rebels is Kanan, and one of my all-time favorite characters is Ahsoka. So the past 4 episodes have just been so much.
But so good.
So good.
So good.
So good.
Like A+. This episode.
A+.
This group of episodes. I'm just so happy.
It's strange. I wonder if I would have had. I mean, obviously, The Last Jedi was a crazy reaction experience, and I wonder if we would have had similar, like, vocal, loud reactions to The Last Jedi if we hadn't been in a movie theater. You know what I mean? Because I've never reacted to Star Wars the way I reacted to those episodes of Rebels last night.
Well, it's because it was like a personal experience. Like, I was watching it alone, you were watching it alone, and we were like very much in touch with like the immediate reaction instead of like shielding them.
Yeah, exactly. It was oh man. I love Star Wars and
so much.
It's like we say this all the time, but it's such a great time to be a fan because the reason we can appreciate an episode like this is because we have all the knowledge of everything that's come before it. And that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's not to say that like you have to watch other things to understand this episode, but having that, like, you understand that Ezra is walking through something sacred, something different when you hear all these certain quotes and people kind of, talking through his journey. And it's like, you don't need to know who they are and pinpoint the exact moment, to understand that this means something, that these are powerful Force users or something throughout like the Skywalker saga, the history, the Star Wars lore that is important. And it's not like you need this like extensive knowledge of reading all these books and everything to understand this. You just need to pay attention to the show, watch the movies, and understand it. And it's just, you can get that feeling from this.
Yeah, exactly. But I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. And
yes.
Charlotte has a 20-second recap that she has to do of some pretty crazy episodes.
Well, okay. So we voted.
Listen, the poll. Okay, listen. Someone on Twitter, I think, said that Charlotte should get a 40-second recap for these episodes, but I say nay because I had to do a 20-second recap of Kanan's literal death. Okay, so just because Ahsoka lives, ! Doesn't mean you get 40 seconds, all right?
All right, so let me just propose this to you. What if we did 30 seconds? And that way that next week, when you have to summarize 90 minutes of content, you get 30 seconds.
I'm not scared of the 20 seconds.
I'm not either. I just feel like I'm literally not going to finish.
That's part of the fun. All right.
Alrighty.
25 seconds.
Okay, 25. All right. I'm going to start my
we
clock.
We can do 30. The 90 minutes is a long episode.
I know. The literal finale.
How did I end up with the finale?
I don't know. No one was like paying attention to that when we started this.
I know.
Anyway, I'm going to start the clock in 3, 2, 1. Kanan's dead, and Ezra now has the stone from the temple, and the wolves are there, so they all get on the wolves, and they go to the one portal on the other side of the planet, and it takes them to the other side of the planet. And then it's a dig site, and you're like, oh my god, what is this? But it's a temple, and they're excavating something mortisy. And quickly, Ezra and Sabine discover that they have to align their hands to open it, and Ezra touches it, and they go through a portal lined with wolves, and then the world between worlds, he hears many voices and witnesses Ahsoka and Vader's duel, and Malachor, and then snatches Ahsoka, saving her life. All right. What is up with my timer noise?
I don't know, but you got off to a pretty shaky start at the top end there, and
it's just a lot of stuff.
Yeah, Charlotte has her notes in our GDoc, and looking at this, I'm like, you got too many notes for 40-second recap, let alone a 20 or 30-second recap.
You know. All right, do you want me to finish it though?
No, that's not the game.
Okay.
That's not the game.
All right, so what'd I miss? The entire second episode.
You basically just got to the temple.
Yeah. And I didn't even really like cover the fact that Sabine and Ezra, like Sabine has a conversation with the quote art critic and everything, and they discuss what's going to happen. Yeah. And then Palpatine shows up, and they have to run him out, and then they run away, and then
I get to tell you what you missed. That's how this game works.
Okay. So, all right, continue.
You missed all of that. You missed the important fact that one of the loaf wolves carries Chopper in its mouth, which that was fun.
Oh my god, that was so good.
Hera continuing to mourn and grieve for Kanan, which is very important. Obviously, Ezra goes through the temple and he snatches Ahsoka. We get to see the other half of the Malachor duel, which whoa. We get to see Kanan. We are forced to see Kanan's last moments again. And then the Emperor does some crazy-ish. And and then we end up outside the temple. It disappears. They fly away. Sabine is awesome in this episode. And then we all cried at the end.
Cool. Glad we're in agreement on that.
Glad we're in agreement. We all sobbed. It was fine.
Sorry I failed. You're going to fail next week. It's going to be great.
Okay, wow. Rude.
Okay, so we're going to proceed with our normal Fulcrum Files parts, which in part 1, we do our highs and lows, which is 2 highs and 1 low.
In part 2, we're going to cover the story of these past 2 episodes.
And then finally, in part 3, we're going to discuss characters. So without further ado, let's get started.
There are whispers of this alleged Jedi in the streets. In time, such whispers might spark belief in something other than the strength and security of the Empire. And that, gentlemen, is something I cannot have.
So welcome to part 1, where we're going to do our highs and lows. So Caitlin, do you want to start?
Yes. My first high is the portal. Just in general, everything that is encompassed within the portal, the arts, the stars, the music, the characters, the voices, the Palpatine, the connection, the everything.
Like the portal itself.
The portal itself.
The world between worlds.
Yeah, exactly. The world between worlds is my high.
Okay, cool. Same. But my first high is I have 3 things written down. Whoops. Okay. The voices, the hand touching, and all the connections to The Last Jedi. It seemed like we say this all the time on the show and
it's
everything.
So true. It's never been more true in this episode.
But look to the animation department for the future of Star Wars. It is so connected. And there were so many things during this episode. I was texting you. I was like, oh my God, the hands touching. I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. Firstly, and we'll get into that later.
Firstly, I got to say that Charlotte was just so on point with all of the connections. Like, she was catching them as they were coming. Meanwhile, I was just freaking out that I don't think I was hearing things properly, especially once we got to Ahsoka's portal. And I didn't hear anything. Like, what voices? There were no voices at that point. I was just zoned out and like, what if I'm gonna have to watch Ahsoka die from this end of the portal? Like, this is not okay. But Charlotte was on it throughout this episode. So props.
Yeah,
to you.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I was literally like, oh my God. Remember that like filler dig episode that everyone kind of hated from the beginning of the season? Yeah. I was like, wow, that's connected. What else? Oh, I was thinking about Revenge of the Sith the entire time. I was texting you about that, and you were like, oh my God, but I can't even focus on that right now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I can focus on nothing.
Okay, so what's your second high?
My second high, okay, obviously I just have to say it goes without saying that Ahsoka is within the portal high. But my second high is the art history and archaeology in this episode just filled me with joy. My undergraduate degree is in anthropology / archaeology and art history. So seeing that with Sabine, I was like, yes, girl, get it. Let's walk through this. What are the motifs? What's the coloring? What's the history? Where are we?
It was so good. And I think Jay, our friend Jay, tweeted, like, I've waited 4 seasons for Sabine to go all art history on us. And man, the payoff was really good. I loved it.
It was so great. And I loved how Ezra knew that Sabine knew what was going on, like with the hands, and him and Ahsoka are running out of the temple, and she's like, what are we going to do? Like, how are we going to close the temple? And he's like, Sabine will know.
Yeah.
Because even though it's a Force thing, it's a knowledge thing too about art and how it works. Also, it's art, Ezra. Everything has meaning. This whole podcast is good because we infuse meaning. We like search for meaning from every piece of Star Wars, and Rebels just told us that we should be doing that.
It was so validating.
It was so validating.
My second high is the fact that Ahsoka lives. I can't believe that we had waited. So I remember watching that episode with you in your parents' guest room upstairs when...
Oh my God, on Malachor.
And it was like... Oh, we were like, oh my God, this is it. This is it. Oh my God, it's not it. I remember like standing up after being like, what just happened? And dealing with the Ahsoka lives, ? And then exclamation point and all those different times. Oh, man. And we got our answers tonight and more. And I'm just tonight, it was last night. I'm so, so happy.
I'm thrilled. I am alive with Star Wars today. Obviously Charlotte and I are both huge Ahsoka fans, and I guess it also goes without saying that we're huge fans of the mysticism that the animation department has infused throughout Star Wars. So we're really big fans of that. I know some people aren't. Some people don't really dig that, which is fine, but we're probably going to be focusing a lot on that in this episode, so just so you all know.
Yeah, we're really into it. Okay, so what about a low?
Literally nothing.
Yeah,
My note is literally none at me. come at me.
Yeah, I have no low. I'm not even kidding. I honestly, these were perfect episodes. I was talking to my mom today on the phone, and she was like, "Why are you so tired?" I was like, "I just witnessed 2 perfect Star Wars episodes on television last night, and I was so excited I could hardly sleep." It's the truth, though, to me. I was just really satisfied.
I was so satisfied. I mean, I couldn't even form coherent thoughts. I mean, when we were on the phone, I felt like you were trying to talk to me about serious things, and I was just running around the room what? And did you see this? And what about that? I couldn't even think of the first thing I wanted to say, and I feel like this whole episode is going to be the same way for me. My mind is just running a million miles an hour.
Same. Our notes are basically 90% of them are in all caps, and it's kind of hard to read now. But when we were typing when I was typing them up last night, I was like, ah!
I thought the same thing when I got on the G-Doc today. I was like, oh, ow, this hurts my eyes a little bit. It's all
made
caps.
So much sense last night.
Last night it was fine.
Anyway,
but now,
yeah. Let's move on to story because we're both desperate to actually get into this.
Yes.
We will not rest until we bring an end to the Empire, until we restore our Republic. Are you with me?
Okay, welcome to part 2, where we're going to start talking about the story of these 2 episodes. And we're going to start with our favorite question for our story section in Fulcrum Files. What's the state of the rebellion?
So interesting, because you don't really get much of the rebellion in this episode.
You get a lot more of the Empire. Let's rephrase. What's the state of the Empire in this episode?
Well, I think first off, we know the Empire on Lothal is freaking out over the fact that they lost the TIE Defender. And we're seeing a whole separate part of it that's clearly this other project that's not necessarily Imperial. I wouldn't say it's Imperial. I think it's it is Imperial, but it's not military. It is its own special project. And at least that's what I think. Did you get that?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, people have always made the comparison between the Empire and the Nazis, you know,
Yeah.
And of course the Nazis did a lot with archaeological excavations and art conservation and things like that too, and a lot of art looting as well. So this kind of fell right in line with those kinds of comparisons for me.
Totally. And where does your mind go immediately when you see stuff like this? When you're a Star Wars fan, a Lucasfilm fan? Indiana Jones. So it's and we know that obviously in Indiana Jones, the Nazis were interested in certain artifacts and everything, but it wasn't necessarily the military. It was different. And this is a whole separate project on Lothal. And so the state of the Empire, I think they're stressing. And they're stressing even more after this episode is over, because some kid was able to open the temple pathway portal door and
passage portal door
and do the thing that they've been trying to do for so long, and he closed it, and now it's all gone.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, Palpatine knows too that that's what happened. It's not like the Minister or Thrawn could try to cover up their tracks about what happened, because Palpatine was there. He knows.
Exactly.
But then too, I mean, just the story in general, it's inside the portal, it's the literal story of Star Wars. Everything is represented, and that's incredible. Star Wars has never felt so cohesive to me than it did throughout the portal, and just watching all of those scenes back throughout the day, because I've been revisiting those clips again and again. It's just incredible how these lines of dialogue can be imbued with such meaning, especially when put in a different context, inside this time portal place. You really get a sense of just how expansive this story is.
Totally. It's I've seen a lot of people get a little stressed that Lucasfilm actually went there with creating this time warp. But it's really interesting because I've been revisiting a lot of past, Caitlin and I both have, of the Clone Wars and the Clone Wars documentaries and behind the scenes and everything. And I've become really interested in this whole idea of the cosmic and living force, which was brought up in the Yoda arc in the Lost Missions with Qui-Gon. And this is alluding to a little bit of like spoilers for the upcoming The Last Jedi novel, but it is mentioned in there. So it makes me believe that it's important. And this is the cosmic force. What we're witnessing, what we're seeing, this is the cosmic force, which feeds the living force, obviously. And and even, I think, is it Ezra that says that? Who says the cosmic force? Because it happened.
It's Ahsoka.
It's Ahsoka, right?
Yeah, and if you guys don't know, because I'd kind of forgotten about this whole Yoda arc because Yoda's not my fave. But the living force is what Obi-Wan talks about in A New Hope. But, it surrounds us, it binds us, it penetrates us. It's basically the energy between beings here on, Earth, as it were, whatever planet. It's like what Rey's talking about in the beginning of her training with Luke. It's life and death. It's hot and cold. It's energy. But the cosmic force is like the will of the force. And it's like leveled up from the living force, if that makes sense. And it's like, it kind of alludes to like that the cosmic force is what would have created Anakin. Right?
Yes, that's kind of the general idea. And I mean, without even going there, because I don't think it's necessary to go there, but it's like the world between worlds is the manifestation of the cosmic force. It is kind of where these portals are kind of identifying the will of the force. When Ezra witnesses Kanan die and he understands that sacrifice, finally, it's like they're showing them that because that is the will of the force. I mean, obviously it's like mind bending and it's really kind of hard to wrap your mind around because that's the point. And it's also like not clearly that defined, but I recommend everyone revisit that Yoda arc just because I find it so interesting and also maybe a little bit more even more complicated than the Mortis arc, just because it talks about how people become Force ghosts and kind of defines that and all the trials that you have to go to, which is just so fascinating. Anyway, that we're not here to talk about Yoda, but I do think that while people are saying that this is too weird, it is something that has been alluded to before. It's not it's not an outlier. It actually feeds into previous things that we've talked about that we're aware of within the Force.
And so what I love too is when Ezra first enters the portal and you hear Obi-Wan say, what is this place, which is the audience talking. And then just a couple seconds later, you have Ahsoka saying, just when you think you understand the Force, you find out how little you actually know, which again is all of us. We think we're getting all of this great understanding about the Force through characters like Bendu and through things that are happening in The Last Jedi and even on Dagobah with Luke and Anakin's visions, but the truth is we have no idea about what the Force really is, and this whole temple is just another layer to it. And I love how they, that line from Ahsoka and from Obi-Wan and others too in that moment were our introduction into this place and kind of a warning of things are not going to go the way you think they are here, and you really don't know anything.
Yeah. They're also, back to the discussion of the cosmic force, there is the quote from Qui-Gon that happens during that time too. A force that consists of two parts. Living beings generate the living force, which in turn powers the wellspring that is the cosmic force, which is from the Yoda arc. And then we also hear Yoda say, luminous beings are we, not this crude matter, which again is a reminder that this sort of thought process has been around since 1980. And we're supposed to be comforted by these quotes, like you say with Obi-Wan. It's just so interesting. I feel like I'm really going to be constantly fascinated by this, and like I should say that I have transcribed every single quote that I can possibly hear in this episode and the one before it. And I put it on our website. We have a whole list if you're interested.
Yeah, definitely go and check that out because it's a lot, and keep the list with you as you go back and rewatch the episode too, because the way that these lines are broken out in the episode is really interesting too.
Especially when the one where Ezra is like walking and what is included and what isn't. I thought that there wasn't any of the Last Jedi quotes included, but I actually 10 minutes before we started recording found one where Rey says something inside me has always been there. So I just think it's just so great. I keep finding quotes buried under quotes.
Yeah, it is. And it's cool because that first part where Ezra's in the portal sets up everything that's going to happen. If you know what you're listening, it's kind of like with The Last Jedi. Once you go back and rewatch it, you understand what all the voices are kind of pointing towards. But in that first viewing, you don't really understand it. Like when Yoda says you have to train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose, Ezra is fearing losing Kanan, and he's afraid he doesn't know how to learn how to move on. And that's what he's going to be learning here in this place. And Kanan says, I won't let him lose his way like I did. And Dave kind of talks about in Rebels Recon how Kanan's, actually it's probably referencing the moment with Ahsoka, and why Kanan, as part of the cosmic force at this point, is kind of taking Ezra back to that moment where he lost his way and it ended really poorly for Kanan, Ezra, and Ahsoka. And now Ezra has a chance to rectify it by saving Ahsoka in that moment.
Man.
It's so great. It's so great. And then Maz says, I've seen your eyes. You already know the truth. Ezra knows the truth that Kanan's gone and he can't be saved. And then you hear Jin saying the time to fight is now. And Jin's kind of a symbol of the actual rebellion, like the nitty gritty rebellion. And I'm pretty sure that's what's going to be happening in the next episode too.
And also a symbol of sacrifice as well. And it's obviously we know that. So we come in with that knowledge of this is someone who sacrificed everything for the fate of the rebellion. So it's like, what's going to happen in the future? What's going to happen next week? But we've already seen Kanan do that as well. He sacrificed himself for his family. So, there's some similarities there.
The question is, are we going to see Ezra sacrifice himself too, in the vein of his master?
I don't know, because I think that, we can just talk about this now. I think that when Ezra understands that he has to let go of, he wants to go through and save Kanan and in turn kind of like change and kill his family, right? When I say family, I mean like found family and friends, and kind of undermine his own sacrifice. Once he realizes that he can't do that, it's almost like this realization has come over him in that he understands that Kanan's last lesson to him was the understanding of selflessness and knowing when to not push too far. And it's almost like when he turns away and he knows exactly what he's supposed to do, we're going to carry that sort of information into the finale of the series, because you kind of understand that now Ezra, understanding this, will potentially do the same thing to save the ones that he loves and his surroundings, and even the cause that he have come to care about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you were texting me about this earlier, but Kanan found his peace and purpose moment, just like Luke does in The Last Jedi, and it's so interesting how these things parallel off each other. And I mean, in The Last Jedi, Rey had 3 lessons that she was supposed to get from Luke, and she only got 2. And then we come to Rebels, and it's kind of been billed as one last lesson. That's kind of been a tagline they've been running with, and it's like, oh, I guess you could kind of say it's the last lesson from The Last Jedi. And Ezra says that Kanan taught him this last lesson in the temple, and it was about selflessness and sacrifice. And that's also what Luke did in The Last Jedi. So Luke and Kanan both taught their Padawans, essentially, Ezra and Rey, about selflessness and sacrifice. And, if Luke had been taken out of that moment, like if Rey had an opportunity to save Luke, like Ezra did Kanan, they all would have died too. They're very parallel situations, and I don't know how they do it. Because it's so masterfully done. And it's like now in animation, I feel like I'm getting a better understanding and appreciation for what happened in The Last Jedi. And I know that because it isn't in like the deleted scenes of The Last Jedi that there actually was a third lesson, but they took it out.
But it just doesn't even matter. It doesn't matter because it's like we're supposed to kind of come away with the knowledge in the movie like, oh, she only got 2 lessons when Luke said 3 lessons, so what's her third lesson? Or is the third lesson the next movie and like her coming into her own and becoming that leader? That's kind of what we're supposed to think, and I think that's why they kept that line.
Yeah, they would have changed it if it didn't work.
Yeah.
So it's like there's just so many parallels. It's great.
Okay, so let's talk about another parallel. The Mortis wall.
Wow.
So first off, it's amazing to see, and it's so exciting to see as a Clone Wars fan, this type of Force lore brought back. We're Mortis fans, so clearly we were excited. But something that like is just so interesting to me was that they played into this whole, and maybe this is just a little too literal, but I honestly don't think it is. The fact is that in order to open the portal, Ezra had to 1, listen, and 2, touch his hand to another hand in order to open it. And it's just so, I can't get over it.
Where have we seen listening and hand touching in the same sequence?
Oh man, I can't even think about it.
I don't remember.
I'm drawing a blank.
I'm drawing a really big blank. Guys, it was The Last Jedi. It was Rey and Kylo. They literally this is I need to know how much of The Last Jedi Dave Filoni saw, how much Ryan and Dave have I just need to know, because
I don't think we're ever going to know this. At least not until
it's all finished.
Like everything is finished, because there's just the similarities to me are so much. And I did just say like I hope I'm not taking it too literally, but I don't think I am.
No.
Just because to me it's too like things were aligning in this moment, in Ezra's moment, in Rey and Kylo's moment. They had a greater understanding of each other. Ezra finally understands what he has to do. It's an opening into him discovering his destiny and also discovering what it means to be selfless. It's just like the parallels to me are insurmountable.
And I mean, you can't even to say that we're reading too much into this. I mean, this episode literally tells you, number 1, hand-holding is a language.
Yeah, they straight up say that.
Hands are a language. And number 2, it's art. You read into everything, and filmmaking is an art, and everything has meaning. I mean, like it can't be any more explicit than that. And given how much how much screen time is spent on hand-holding in The Last Jedi, I think it's to say there's not something there. I don't know. There's something there. And 2 people have talked for a while. I mean, Clone Wars fans have talked for a while too about the parallel between Rey as daughter and Kylo as son, and kind of representing this balance. And it's no surprise that, it took Ezra touching daughter to open the door. And just like when Rey reaches out to Kylo, she creates a bridge between them. And they go into this place, Ezra goes into this portal that represents all the moments, the past and the future. And you and I are of the opinion that Kylo has to restore the past in himself in order to redeem his own future. And they're in this,
which is a line that literally happened in the last episode of Rebels.
And they're in this timeless void. Ezra is, and then it's the son, Kylo, that has to close the temple and close the door on this like story of imbalance in the Force that's coming to episode 9. And I don't know if any of that made sense, but it's like it started with Rey reaching out and showing compassion, and then it's going to end with Kylo making a choice. You and I think that choice is going to be for redemption, but it's going to end with his choice, I think, whatever it is. And that's going to close out our story just like it closed out the temple.
Man, the parallels to me are just like, they're there. That made sense to me. If it doesn't to you, it's okay. I understand.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's talk about while we're still on this Rey and Kylo thing, let's talk about their lines within the temple, because So it starts off with Kylo, show me, and then Rey, we'll see each other again, and then Kylo, grandfather, and then Rey, I believe that, and then Kylo, I will finish what you started. And like, I'm not saying that the layering of those lines is important, but I'm saying the layering of those lines is important. I mean, I know that those lines, for Rey, it's when she's speaking to Finn in the film. But I think in this context, you can infer that it's also about her connection to Kylo, too. That she'll see him again. I believe that. And that somehow it is going to come back to Kylo finishing what Anakin started, not necessarily Darth Vader.
Totally. I'm looking at my thing and realizing I didn't actually press update, but it's fine. I will after this episode records. That the fact that in between that, Anakin says, "I won't lose you, Padme," and the line of Rey being like something inside. It's just like there's something there. They would have layered those differently had they not been somehow connected. Anyway,
absolutely.
Okay, so.
Also, my other heartbreak moment of this whole portal time is as Ezra is walking up to Ahsoka's portal and you hear Anakin from the Clone Wars movie saying, "You never would have made it as Obi-Wan's Padawan, but you might just make it as mine." And that's the beginning of their relationship. And then we get to see Darth Vader literally go in for the kill shot against Ahsoka.
It's so much, Caitlin.
It's so much. I'm like taken from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows.
But then you're just like, at least I am. I'm just like so happy she's alive. And now I'm just like thinking about all the potential possibilities of like, what does this mean? How long does Ahsoka survive? When are we going to see next of Ahsoka?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, is she going to meet up with Obi-Wan? Is she going to seek him out?
I don't know. Maybe we should speculate on this a little bit because clearly Ezra and her made a promise to meet up again.
Mm-hmm.
So if we think, okay, it's very tough to think about this. We were trying to walk our way through this last night, right? Is how do we think about time in this place without time? So Ezra is looking at this window of basically 2 years prior, and he pulls her from that, and now she's in present day, quote unquote. Mm-hmm. And then she jumps back in, but we are not positive that was like immediately after her battle with Vader.
Oh, no. Dave says it on Rebels Recon. He like basically brought her back to that moment.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, because you're right. We were thinking that. And I think you probably missed that because you were watching Rebels Recon at like 2 a.m. I saw your text come through. So fair enough. But yeah, because I think before I saw Rebels Recon, we were both thinking, oh, maybe she's actually been transported back to like Ezra's present day when she goes through her temple door. But in Rebels Recon, Dave says, because he's talking about how you, like, as an audience, we've actually missed none of Ahsoka's story at this point. She's right where we left her, and we're all caught up on her story. So we've actually missed nothing in that 2 years. So I don't know what that means.
So the question is like, does she survive the next 2 years?
Yeah, I'm gonna say yes. I think
me too. Me too. They wouldn't have brought her back just to be like, oh, she dies when she goes back in. Haha.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think Ahsoka is such a cool character. Like, she's been able to transcend these different mediums really well and these different eras really well, and that's not something we get to see from a lot of Star Wars characters. Because now she's going through effectively. I mean, assuming she makes it through to the original trilogy, which I would say she does. She's been in the prequel trilogy, the like middle gray zone, and now the original trilogy too, and interacting with a lot of our main characters. Like, she's got a lot of insight that not many Star Wars characters have. Like, Obi-Wan is really the only comparable one.
Totally. And so to your question of, do you think that she's going to meet up with Obi-Wan? I mean, I feel like that's pretty logical, in my opinion, that that's where she would go to seek out someone else who was also in hiding. to wait it out these like 2 years until they meet Ezra and until she's able to meet Ezra for whatever's going to happen in the next 90-minute finale.
Ooh, or maybe she goes to Dagobah because now that she met with Yoda in the temple, right? In season 2. And part of me thinks that if she knew Obi-Wan was alive, she would have already gone to Obi-Wan in like prior to season 2 of Rebels, which maybe she has. We haven't seen all of her story from that time. But I feel like they would save that moment for us to see.
Yeah.
So maybe she doesn't know that Obi-Wan's still alive, and maybe she goes to Dagobah because she knows Yoda is out there and to learn more about what happened and maybe what's to come.
More like she's going to learn how to transcend and like pass on through the Force in the way that Obi-Wan learned and everything like that Yoda has learned. I'm just like, I'm really high off that Yoda arc.
You are. You've been talking about it for a week now.
It's almost like maybe you should watch it.
Maybe.
Peer pressure is what I do best on this.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, so before we jump into characters, I just want to throw this question out here.
Oh boy.
Should we be worrying about the implications of them kind of opening up something like this? Because I go back and forth because I'm really happy it exists and everything, but in the wrong hands, it's true. It could be detrimental. We could see like an alternate timeline, which I really don't want to see.
Yeah.
I was it on the last episode where you're like, the best thing about Star Wars is that it's linear.
I think we said that in a number of episodes about like Star Wars is very unique in that it's very linear. It's not like Star Trek where they've got a whole alternate universe thing going on. And now we've got a time portal. So that's new.
Hey.
Where someone actually went back into the past and changed the present, which is crazy.
But it sparks a lot of thought to me about Anakin's like plight in Revenge of the Sith to want to change his visions, to change the future, etc. And again, we talk about this in the real world in terms of like creators getting their hands on something, a concept like this, but it's at the same time, it's like that's kind of the point, is that this whole thing is kind of dangerous. And Palpatine wants to get his hands on it. He wants to control the galaxy through this, right? So it's like it's kind of meta, and that this whole episode is really freaking meta. But it's kind of meta because there's this like evil person getting their hands on it. But to me, I don't really know how to feel about this existing as a concept, even though I love it.
Yeah. And I think they, at least for now, they've kind of closed it off because the temple's gone. And theoretically, Palpatine, like, if this is the only door, then it's closed off for good, which it kind of makes it feel like it is based on what we know so far, like Lethal, where they've been doing the digging and the archaeology excavations. This is the first place we've really seen them doing that for an actual temple, you know? So, I mean, maybe each temple kind of has its own thing, you know, like Jeddah had the Kyber crystals, Lethal has the temple, Crate has the mines, you know, everything kind of has its purpose. So maybe this was the only accessible entry point. Although that's not true because Yoda kind of accesses it when he's on Dagobah, right?
Kind of. I mean, it's
different.
It's kind of undefined.
Yeah,
it's different.
It's not the time portal place, but he's kind of like he's with the cosmic force.
Exactly, and yes, you will see that when you revisit the Yoda arc.
Yeah,
but like I feel like right now I am satisfied, and I also like genuinely trust Lucasfilm storytelling that this will not be like detrimental to like ruining future timelines in terms of like film production or anything. It's a powerful concept.
It is.
That this kind of question actually does need to be asked, even though like I'm not going to sit here and like sweat about it.
Yeah. Well, the thing is too, the moment that they changed, for as big a moment as it is to us as fans, it doesn't actually have a lot of implications for what's going on. You know, if they had saved Kanan, then the Ghost Crew would have died, and that would have really impacted whatever's happening next week. But the moment they chose to rescue Ahsoka, it's just her and Vader, and it's not like Ahsoka was sacrificing herself for Ezra. I mean, she pushes him away, but Vader at that point, like Vader's not even concerned about Ezra. He's concerned about Ahsoka.
It's very vengeful.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, exactly. And they're fighting, and it's not like if she dies, like Vader's still going to be around. You know what I mean? I think she tries to have that sacrificial moment when she pushes her sabers through the floor of the temple and starts breaking it, and you see Vader fall through that hole, and maybe she would have thought, I'll just kill us both, and then Vader's out of the picture. But that doesn't kill him, so it's not like that changed. Like that moment didn't, like nothing about what happened after that has changed. For Vader, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to describe. Yeah. But it's not like if they went back and saved Luke, then whatever is left of the rebellion would die. Those are like more public moments, where this is just a moment between Ahsoka and Vader. It's probably one of the few moments I feel like you could do something like that.
Agreed. I'm in total agreement. I'm not saying anything because I fully agree. I don't think that Ahsoka was sacrificing herself for any like greater purpose at that point. It was like her old master it was going to be another Vader kill. And it was just like another like tick on the wall for Vader. And it was like another way for him to get revenge on his past. And that never really sat well with me in terms of Ahsoka's overall story. For Vader, like, it makes sense to me because, of course, that would happen with it. It just like it attributes to his man pain, right? Like, of course it does, but I'm glad that moment didn't happen because now we get to see Ahsoka have a bigger part in the future, or whatever happens.
And the thing is, like, Ahsoka could never have had an effect on Vader because that's not her role in this.
She's not Luke.
She's not Luke. And
she
says, I couldn't save my master. That's what Ahsoka wanted from that moment. And when she realized she couldn't have it, she says, I will avenge his death. That was her purpose going forward. And we knew she was never going to do that because, Vader lives. So I think that makes the time change a little bit more. If you're not having a great time with the time changing in Rebels, I feel like that maybe might help calm your fears about time travel in Star Wars. Because it's interesting to think about, what would have happened in that moment. If Vader had killed Ahsoka, she already punched the floor out, so he still would have fallen through. We would have been in the exact same place.
Agreed. It just
anyway.
It makes more sense for me that now that she's pulled out of that situation, and it makes me happy, and that's what matters.
So much gas tonight.
I don't know what's up. Okay,
and that makes me happy.
Okay, so let's move on to part 3.
Yes.
Well, my name's Ezra. This is Kanan. That's Sabine and Zeb. It's nice to meet you, 7567.
Actually, my name is Rex, Captain, 501st Clone Battalion.
All right, welcome to part 3. It's our favorite part, even though I felt like we spent a lot of time in our last part. But this is part 3, all about characters. And for me, the standouts of this episode was obviously Ezra, Ahsoka, and Sabine.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So the dark side wants a conduit between worlds and between time and space. I feel like you need to chat about this with Palpatine because you blew my mind when you were texting me about it.
Well, I don't know if I have fully kind of formed the thought, but so Palpatine says we must seize the power within, a conduit between the living and the dead. To me, my mind literally immediately went to Revenge of the Sith about how Palpatine says it's a power only one has achieved, but if we work together, I'm sure we can discover the secret. And so that was in Revenge of the Sith. And now here, 19, 18 years later, he's still trying to discover these secrets to controlling life and death. And he can find that within this world between worlds. And to me, it just it completely linked things together. It's not just Darth Plagueis the Wise's like myth or anything. It is a tangible, reachable thing that can be done. And Palpatine, we know Palpatine, he lied to Anakin about like the fact that he had this power, that the dark side has this power. And now potentially this is what he's seeking here. And it's not just that. He's not seeking it for Vader ever, but he's always seeking further power and further control. And to me, it was just such a clear connection to Revenge of the Sith and all the lies that he has told and how he's always trying to kind of build this set of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, imagine if we talk a lot about how Palpatine has been playing the long game. Imagine if he could go through this portal and change a couple of things back in Phantom Menace era. He wouldn't have to play the long game. He could just set it up from the get-go. He'd have so much more power and control. And the Minister even says to Sabine, whoever controls the temple controls the galaxy.
Mm-hmm. And you know exactly what he would do. Like, there's a couple of things, if you go movie by movie, what he would do if he could, like, be even more of a puppet master, right? Like, what was slowing Anakin down but also attributing to his fall, he would totally kill Padme, or Padme would never be part of the picture to begin with, because that is Anakin's, like, source of compassion. And even his relationship with Obi-Wan, like all of those things would be gone because those are the first things that Palpatine tries to sway Anakin away from by instilling all this mistrust. So it's just like, to me, it's not like, sure, the story like presented this whole, the Emperor is really interested in figuring out this power, and then Ezra is a part of it somehow, but it has just greater implications for me in terms of the dark side and in general. And I'm just like, I'm still kind of thinking about it, and it makes me honestly want to watch like some of those like turning to the dark side moments that you see in Revenge of the Sith, because I know that these are concepts that have been thought of, especially since they devote this whole scene that's like been memed about Darth Plagueis the Wise and everything and all of that discourse. And I'm really fascinated by how we can link this episode and the Emperor's wants to all the other times that we've seen the Emperor.
Yeah, exactly. And it's cool too, because we were in our Clone Wars behind the scenes binges that we were doing last week. Dave at one point talks about how, I forget what episode it is, but it's basically where the Palpatine's been kidnapped again. It's an episode in the Clone Wars, and about how all of these moments have all been put in place by Palpatine as a way of testing Anakin's power and his loyalty to Palpatine. And Dave makes this great point that all throughout the Clone Wars, Palpatine is constantly getting Anakin alone, so that he can be influencing him. And it's like, if we have Palpatine in, Rebels time period, Palpatine knows that Anakin is going to follow the dark side. He knows he's pliable. He knows he's powerful enough, and he can manipulate Anakin. So it's like, now he doesn't have to waste all that time too. He can just go back, like you said, get rid of Padme, kick off Obi-Wan, kill Shmi, and bada bing, bada
even
boom.
just like discover Anakin on Tatooine himself.
It's like, exactly. Yeah, that saves so much time. Cut your budget in half for your take over the galaxy budget line item. Things.
And you wouldn't get the warrior who was cut in half either. It's just like you can see how Palpatine would want this so badly because he had groomed this apprentice for so long, right? Essentially. And when he finally gets him, Anakin screws up, Obi-Wan like maims him and everything, and he gets this like robotic version who's still really powerful but isn't his full potential. He's like literally half of himself.
Yeah.
So it's just like, obviously Palpatine would want to do certain things so he didn't have to go through any of these trials and tribulations.
Somehow even Palpatine has regrets.
Yeah, it's weird. Like you put yourself in, which we rarely do. We don't really think too much about Darksiders except for Kylo Ren and Vader. Wow. Okay, I guess we do. But I don't necessarily sit here and think about like what the Emperor's thinking.
Yeah, no.
It's rare that I think about the Emperor in his thoughts, but like in this moment you can definitely try to like conceptualize what he wants.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is the most we've ever talked about the Emperor on our show.
Yes, this is probably going to be it.
So hope you liked it.
But it's just such a really, I love it. I love what Star Wars does about like these kids who are nobody. Ezra was nobody. And now he was able, from his skill of listening and understanding in his 4 years of being, I don't know how long this is, 4 seasons of being Kanan Jarrus's Padawan. And even though Kanan wasn't even necessarily a Jedi Knight, training under Kanan, he has this unique ability to open this portal that everyone wants to open. Mm-hmm. And now the Emperor wants him. And I just love that what that sets up is that Ezra is this special kid. And we've come so far with this character, and it's really awesome to witness. And I know there are no people who aren't Ezra fans, but to me, you watch the first season of Rebels and then you watch this episode and you're like, oh my God, Ezra has been through so much and he's learned so much, and he is really the stand-in for us. Mm-hmm. He's very relatable that way. And for me, that's another reason why I think people don't really love him that much, because they kind of see a little too much of themselves in him, and they realize that they would be the same annoying kid too. But I don't know. I get kind of emotional when I think about it.
No, I completely do. I think it was Jonah Murray who had made this point on Twitter that if you think season 1 Ezra would have made the decision to leave Kanan, to not save Kanan in the time portal, he would have saved Kanan, and then, you know, that would have had really big implications. But season 4 Ezra knows to listen, and that's what they've been saying. Like, you're a good listener. And he listens to Ahsoka, and he listens to what the Force is telling him, to know that this is one thing that you can't change. And this is how things have to be. And now he has the maturity to move on, and to grieve, but to also say goodbye. And I think that's really powerful. That last scene just breaks my heart.
Me too.
Because he has such a confidence and determination about him now in that last moment when he's talking to Hera. And I don't know, it's like a goodbye to Kanan and a goodbye to Lothal. I'm like, are you ever going to come back to Lothal, Ezra? I don't know. Is this it? It feels, I mean, it's the penultimate episode, and it definitely ended on a foreboding, melancholy note, but also really hopeful, because we know who Ezra is now, and we know what he's capable of and how far he's come. And that is going to make all the difference for the rebellion. I'm certain.
Totally. And I mean, just even with the wolf, who I guess they kind of underscore this in the episode, the wolf is essentially Kanan. And when he watches the wolf walk away, after all this time of the wolves trying to get something from Ezra, for the wolves to make him listen, to appear to him, like, we know that this is the last time he's going to see the wolves, and that he has gained everything that he needed to gain in this previous experience because of his listening skills, because of he opened it up.
Just like at the end of The Last Jedi when Leia tells Rey, we have everything we need now.
We need.
And this is like the middle episode of like this basically trilogy of episodes. Wow. And in the first section, we lost Kanan, just like in The Force Awakens, we lost Han. And now in this middle part, there's hand touching, just like there's hand touching in The Last Jedi. Listen, I'm not saying we need to watch extra closely to this last episode, but I think we need to watch extra closely to this last episode.
Well, to me, it's only moving in that direction just because it is going to be this, quote, one final battle, right? And we're going to... something is going to happen, and we think that if this is going to be the conclusion of the sequel trilogy, which we are led to believe it is, then of course there's going to be one final battle. It's very similar. You have to go into this with those kind of goggles of how is this going to affect the greater scheme and the greater understanding of the Star Wars lore in general.
Yeah, it's gonna be great to compare like that whole, like the sequel trilogy to this trilogy of episodes we've had in these last couple weeks. because there are some pretty strong parallels, and maybe they're kind of nominal, but I don't know.
Right.
Saying. I think they're pretty strong connections.
Okay, so let's talk about Hera and Sabine.
God. Going back to hands as a language, very deliberate with Hera in this episode too. Putting her hand on her shoulder when she feels the presence of Kanan or is imagining it, whatever it is. And she keeps her hand there throughout the episode. And even at the end when Ezra comes across her, she's got her hand on her shoulder. And, that's when she asks Ezra, he's really gone. Because I think she was hoping too. I mean, going back to my incorrect crazy conspiracy theory from last week about how Kanan was in the portal, which technically he was, just saying. And technically he could have been saved, just saying. So it's not entirely wrong. But Hera was holding on to my crazy conspiracy theory too, that Kanan was really in the cave and there would be a way to save him. And there was a way to save him, but it wasn't what needed to be done. And just so sad.
Yeah. Hera is really grief-stricken in this episode and has to make some tough choices. Again, letting her, quote, kids go off. Mm-hmm. And that was really powerful to me, where she was like, okay, it'll be okay. It'll be okay. I trust them.
Oh yeah, and Zeb
and
they're gonna be fine. And she says, "I used to believe that."
It was just that was really emotional for me, because I was like, oh man, so much has been shaken. Hera has been shook to the core. Yeah,
she has been,
and she. I mean, obviously, now we know that, Sabine and Ezra come back, but she didn't know that. And it's, again, now I don't know. I just feel like that was a really big moment for her in her kind of grief and understanding that Kanan is gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, exactly. Okay, so Sabine and Ezra, I loved their whole mission together. I felt like this is some of the best we've ever seen them working together. And I loved how I don't remember what parts it was. It's when Sabine is talking to Hera and they're going for Ezra. And she says something along the lines of Ezra will know what to do. And then you hear Ezra say the same thing about Sabine. Sabine will know what to do. They know each other's strengths. And I don't know. I just really loved how they worked together in this episode. And when Sabine's looking at the art wall and she's like, this is where you need to put your hand. And Ezra's like, what do I need to do? And she's like, do your thing. I don't know what it is. Let's do
it. I did my thing. Now you do yours.
Yeah. They're such a good tag team.
Well, it's funny because they didn't used to be. They used to be fumbling all over the place and trying to figure it out. Sabine was always ahead. Ezra was kind of dawdling behind, or kind of cleaning up the pieces or something. They weren't in sync as they were in this moment. Again, I feel like a broken record when I say this, but I honestly feel like everything has been leading to this sort of pairing, this mission together. And I was really happy to see it. Mm-hmm. They really do have that amazing sibling relationship that they just they know each other so well at this point.
Yeah. If you remember in the very first episodes of season 4, we were thinking about the Ezra train. Because I think the episode asked you to think about it when Ezra was like, I'm with her, but I'm not with her.
Yeah, that first episode. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, but I remember when we were doing Fulcrum Files saying, if they're going to go down this path, they're going to need to lay some more groundwork throughout the season. And they haven't. But I'm still, I was thinking about this throughout the episode, because I realized I hadn't actually thought about the Ezra romantic relationship really much past those opening episodes. And I'm spending so much time together in this episode, I was thinking about it again. And I was like, I wonder if they will do some, assuming they all make it out, if they will do some kind of time jump and things will be different between them in the future. But regardless, regardless, I like you said, I loved how they operated in this episode together, just as a team. I thought, yeah, I think this is some of the best we've ever seen them.
Totally.
And they have like absolute. They're not worried about each other because they know that they're each doing what they're good at.
Mm-hmm. I also love Zeb in this episode. There really wasn't that much of Zeb, but to really discuss. But what did he say at the end? He says something like, "If this is what you and Kanan did on your Jedi missions, like you can keep it."
Yeah,
and I was like, "Yeah,
it was really funny."
Zeb has these great zingers lately that are just so perfect.
Zeb and the Zingers. That should be a band with
You know what?
Chopper. With Chopper as their manager.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I really did like that moment with Zeb. It was really funny. It like definitely brought you out of it, especially because the last thing you had just heard was Kanan saying the Force will be with you, or may the Force, something like that. Something emotional.
Right. Something very emotional.
Something sad. and then you get to hear Zeb, if that's what you guys do, I'd rather not.
Okay, so anything else that we should discuss in the character section?
I don't think so. This is going to be like Mortis, where we're going to have to come back to it a million times over again. I feel like I've already come back to it a million times.
I watched the episode. It hasn't even been out for 24 hours yet, and I've watched both episodes 3 times. Like, what the heck? I never do this.
I know.
Unless it's a Star Wars movie, which I guess I do. But that's how I feel about these episodes.
We don't care about dark side characters. Well, wait a second. We do.
Me hugging my Kylo Ren pillow to my chest as we speak.
Oh, gosh.
I am a walking contradiction.
Listen, I know what I am, okay? I love Kylo Ren. Okay, actually, this doesn't have anything to do with characters. What's interesting is there are no Luke Skywalker lines in the portal.
What the heck? Whoa. Are you right? Oh my God.
You always talk like I'm wrong about these things.
No, I'm just like, I'm looking at my list because I'm really proud of my list. And you're so right.
I know, there's no Luke Skywalker lines.
What is up with that? I'm going to throw last night I was talking to you and I threw my coasters across the room because I was so excited. And right now, what does that mean, Caitlin? What do you think about that?
I don't know. I didn't notice it until my second viewing, like right before the emotional and physical collapse really hit me full force. And I was like, what? What?
What the heck?
I know there's no Luke Skywalker. And then I was going through trying to think of what would have been an appropriate line from Luke Skywalker that would have kind of fallen into the vibe, I guess, they were going for in the portal. And it was like
the only one that I can think about is like, I'm a Jedi like my father before me, but it's not really, they weren't really talking about the Jedi at all. That's not the point.
That they should have, what would have been perfect is to have used some of the Last Jedi lines, which is, I haven't heard distinctly the Rey Last Jedi line that you've referenced. Not to say
it's so faint.
Yeah, it's not to say it's not there, but I haven't heard it personally. But it would have been great to have used one of his lines about him telling Rey about the Force in this portal too, like maybe one of the ones, powerful light and powerful darkness.
That would have been a good one.
That would have been a great Luke line to have in there. Or one about, to think that the Jedi control the Force is hubris or something like that.
Yeah, but even then it gets a little too Jedi heavy. And it's such an interesting choice to me now thinking back upon it. Wow.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I'm going to go through all of Luke Skywalker's lines, or maybe even one from Empire Strikes Back, like the dark side is more powerful.
Yeah, like even something like that. This is what makes me think that it was intentionally left out.
Yeah.
Even though they have Leia in there. Maybe we're missing something, but I don't think we are.
I feel like if they had Luke in there, it would be a little bit more obvious.
Yeah.
Man, that Leia speech has been making the rounds this year with The Last Jedi.
Oh, yeah, that is the speech.
I mean, that's the speech. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine if when wow, if that moment when Ahsoka comes out of her time and we hear Vader, and then if you had heard Luke underneath that, like, is the dark side more powerful?
Stronger.
Is the dark side stronger? Well, because Ahsoka doesn't know what's happening, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like her and Luke would have been in very similar places regarding the dark side and Vader at that moment too. Or even when Palpatine like shows up too, to have had Luke say something like, is the dark side stronger?
Now I'm just like thinking that there's definitely a reason.
Yeah. I don't know what it is. If you guys have ideas, you know where to find us.
Yeah. Hit me with them.
You can at me about that.
Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap up our episode. You can head to our website, skytalkers.com, to see the full list of the quotes that we talked about. And I have transcribed as much as I possibly can. And I will keep adding to it as I watch and rewatch. So head there. The Screen Rant article does not have as many as I do. Just saying.
And the saga continues.
Yes. Okay. But you can follow us on Twitter at SkyTalkersPod. And we are also on Facebook, which we haven't really advertised. So you should go follow us on Facebook. And I just want to say thank you to our awesome patrons, Joanna, Lynn, Neil, Brian, Diana, Susan, Megan, Amy, Kelly, Matt, Jim, Swara, BJ, Ryan, Amy, Daz, Lauren, Serene, Cherie, David, Kyle, Aaron, Stuart, Derek, Connie, Delaney, Robert, Kirsty, Brandon, and Chuck. Thank you guys so much.
Yes, thank you guys so much. And if you like what you hear and want to head on over to iTunes and hit that subscribe button and also leave us a 5-star review, we would really appreciate it. It really helps make our show more visible for other listeners. So please do that if you feel like you have the time. We would really appreciate it. And I think that's it for this really crazy episode. I feel like I'm still recovering from it. And God, thank you, Dave Filoni. Thank you.
Yes.
And I think we'll leave it at that. And may the Force be with you.
May the Force be with you.
Don't forget to thank Dave Filoni on your way out, and we'll see you next time.